Coach, hey, thanks for joining me today on this Simple Coach to Coach interview. Do appreciate us finally connecting after fumbling not once but twice. We finally got together and are able to talk. So thank you for that most precious commodity of your time. And looking forward to today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Coach, you're a rookie, as I mentioned. So we start off with our rookies the same way, and I'm really curious. Can you just talk a little bit about your soccer journey? How did you end up? I'm assuming your life revolved around the beautiful, wonderful ball. And how did you end up at LBC?
Yeah, it was honestly it was an interesting journey because soccer was not my strongest sport growing up. When I was in high school, I was a three-sport athlete, and I really enjoyed the variety of things. So I was a wrestler, I was a soccer player, I was a baseball player, and honestly, soccer was just the one I enjoyed the most. But I feel like skill-wise, I was probably the weakest at, to be honest with you. So just fell in love with it. Did the indoor thing when I was little, and then I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I could do this in college and keep extending my career a little bit. Went to college, played 4 years, ended up being a captain there. Loved it, and I went to Misericordia in Northeast Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And once it was done, I just I couldn't get enough of it. Still wanted to keep going. I didn't really know what was out there because the landscape was really, really changing in the game back then. So I was lucky enough to try to go find a couple semi-pro tryouts. Wasn't really making too much success there, so starting to look at different avenues and got into the coaching world because I feel like it was either coaching or officiating, and I felt like coaching, you get a little bit less flack on some side of it, so that's where I ended up.
As someone who officiates, I can attest to that. Yeah, coaching's a little bit less flack, that's for sure. Um, let All right, you're the women's head coach. Can, talk me through talk when you got to Lebanon Valley. What, 2 years ago?
Yep.
2 years ago. Like, were you? Did you? Did they give you a charge? Like, did they say, "Hey, look, we're hiring you for an X purpose," right? Like, some guys come in, some coaches come in, and they're, "Hey, you're caretaker. We want you to keep the program going. We're more concerned." And that's not a bad thing about graduation rates and that sort of thing. And then there's others who, like, look, you're head coach. We expect you to win. Is there anything like that you were asked to do when you were brought on?
Not necessarily by the department or the at the time the hiring AD. I think the expectation was, continue to manage a strong program, see what you could do to add on to it and get the success back to where it was. I think every program has those peaks and valleys when they have to change over in coaching. But I think the interesting part was it was coming from the players more. I really had a chance to sit down and meet with them. Really, it was through Zoom when I got the job and interviewed every single returning player and just kind of picked their brains about, what do we need to do better? What do we do well? And what do we need more of? And they were really, really good with giving the feedback in terms of the identity, the culture, the inner workings of what they would like. So that's kind of how I attacked it was, what do I want to bring to the table? What changes do I want to make? Obviously, we all want to win. But at the same point, it was a very unique situation because the school I came from to the school I went to, the settings were drastically different. One was a city setting where LBC is a little bit more of a country setting, different type of kid, different type of school. So yeah, it was a lot of talking to a lot of people and figuring out what is it that you want to accomplish, but also how does that align with what I want to accomplish as well.
Yeah, I haven't been to King's College, but it's right down the road from. Isn't it in the same city as?
There, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically share that main street there. Yep.
Yeah. So I didn't get a chance to go, but yes, it is a very beautiful, like it's a beautiful city, like nice city area. But and LVC is definitely on the rural side. Does that present any? Have you discovered any sort of like unique challenges to? I'll just say building your program as a general way, like just because of where
Yeah.
the rural setting and.
Yeah, definitely. I think the type of kid and the area you pull from is very, very different. When I was at a couple past schools, I worked at King's and at Misericordia. The recruiting area was different. Like, say, for King's, for instance, I was very heavy into the tri-state area, but
Hmm.
particularly New Jersey was a very big pull.
Hmm.
And then for Lebanon Valley, a lot of the players come from literally the state of Pennsylvania, and an hour and a half from the school is where the bulk of the makeup comes from. So it's a very different area to recruit from, and a different type of kid, to be honest with you. But I've enjoyed it. It's, yeah, figuring that out in the beginning is definitely a major part, because there's different interests, different majors at the two different schools that draw people.
Hmm.
There was a lot of homework that had to go into it during that interview process to
Yeah.
figure out what pulls people there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, is it safe to say you sort of recruit within a couple hours of where LVC is at? You don't necessarily, I don't want to say go far afield, but you won't come out to Jersey and visit me and watch me officiate.
Well, it's interesting. It's different. So when I was doing the interview to get the job, I looked up all of the student athletes and where they were from, and the entire athletic department, men's and women's. Most of the student athletes were from an hour and a half away, but
Hmm.
there were sprinklings of different states and different areas. So I felt like when we came in as new staff, we could bring the areas I'm used to breaking into, but the new part for me was breaking into that local area, because
Hmm.
that's where the majority of people pulled from.
Hmm.
So when I went a little deeper and said, where are the women's athletes from specifically, that still was an hour and a half. And then I went specific into the women's soccer, and that was still an hour and a half. So the bulk pull is pretty local, but we've been able to break into California. I have a young lady from Georgia coming in next year, a kid from Utah. So we are breaking into some different areas.
That is
And
different.
yeah, yeah. So I think those are just the connections we make through things like this, where, I'm meeting you, and then say down the line, you meet a young lady that you feel is a good
Yeah.
fit. Stuff like that definitely helps to
Hmm.
evolve where we're recruiting from. But yeah,
Hmm.
definitely different pulls.
What do you think it is about Lebanon Valley that a kid from Utah? I'm genuinely curious. I don't mean that
Yep.
disparagingly, right? Because first of all, I'm convinced I have these weird theories about the game just sort of sitting where I sit. And one of those about the college game is I think kids are much more likely than not to go somewhere to play. So if their opportunity, everything aligns, and their opportunity, they're in Utah, and their opportunity, and they're receptive to the school and all those things, and they think they can play and make an impact, they will go to LBC because it's a again, I think they're much more compelled to do that than I think in the past. Is that am I weird about that, or?
No, I think you're on it. I think there's a couple different factors that always kind of play into it. I think if you're looking from the sales part of the school
Hmm.
alone, I think the area being a safe area
Yeah,
helps,
that true.
because
Yeah.
that makes parents feel very trustworthy with,
Hmm.
okay, my kid will be safe here.
Hmm.
The environment and the people there. I think when you go anywhere, you're told it's a great environment, it's family, it's
Yeah.
warm, it's welcoming. Being there now 2 years, I can confirm and say that is the case, which is nice, because that's always a sell point when you're going as a new job anyway. So
Yeah.
that helps. Um, the only two statistics I use in terms of academic sales when people come to school is the job placement rate and the graduation rate. Lev Val has done a great job with. In Pennsylvania alone, it was the number one school with job placement rate for 3 years in a row. So I feel like even though it's small and unique, it does a good job of developing and getting you
Yeah.
ready for the working world. So it has a lot of those interesting pulls. I mean, Hershey Park's 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
Um, then the soccer side. So you're saying specifically, say, how do I get a kid from Utah? To me, I think now it branches off of, other than quality academics,
Hmm.
very attractive majors for health sciences and females, safe environment. Then I think the soccer aspect.
Yeah.
We're trying to implement positional play. It's
Hmm.
very heavy influence from Todd Bean and
Hmm.
Spain and Johan Cruyff.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
We've
familiar.
Yeah, we've spent a ton of time as a staff out there and love the content. We try to implement that style of play into what we do. I honestly think we grab the interest of players that are looking for that controlled build up play
Hmm.
to come to Leval based off how we're trying to play. So I do think that's the X factor in my opinion.
Coach, you're gaining a warm place in my heart. Like that's my other theory is I think there's a lot more kids interested in a much more elevated style of game than what we've witnessed or what witnessed, experienced, what have you. And that I think we're almost on the verge of that, right? Where kids are much more, hey, can we be a little bit more thoughtful about how we play this traditional Route One route, or however, like it's gotten old, and I think a lot of kids, especially in college, sort of get pushed to the side because yeah, they're really talented with the ball, or but they don't look like they're doing the job that a lot of coaches want. I don't know if that made sense,
Yeah.
but
Everybody's still caught up in the big, fast, strong thing, I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I got a question for you that just popped up, and I just noticed it. I think it was yesterday that I guess now the NCAA, the Division One, right? Like they're cutting. I don't know if that's the right word. They're basically capping the number of kids on a roster,
Yeah.
right? I'm just curious. Do you expect any fallout from that? Like, do you think it's going to cascade down because there's these limited opportunities that it's all going to sort of kids are going to now suddenly LBC becomes a destination for somebody who might have otherwise not have thought of you guys?
Yep, no, I agree with you. And you've seen that in the transfer portal. I think even before these changes with the number of roster size, we started getting, when the transfer portal was up and running, starting more transfer interests.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, I'm working with a young lady who just a couple weeks ago was looking to transfer from another place. So it's interesting how things are really, the landscape's changing with the whole NIL stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
roster size is changing. I do think it's a pro and con with the cutting down of numbers. I think it helps the kids that are on the team. It might be more realistic in terms of the playing opportunities now that they're getting. It'll help fill out some programs maybe that are struggling to bring in a couple more people in terms of depth and be where they want to be. Maybe that'll be an opportunity for those kids that maybe were the overflow from other schools.
Mm-hmm.
But in the attack to it too is I think 30. Some people think 30 is a large number, and when the season starts to go on, it's really not a big number. It was funny because I saw a breakdown online that I thought was absolutely brilliant. Like, say you bring in 30 people right out of the at the beginning, say 3 people, all of a sudden, health wise, they're having some issues and you have some injuries. So those 3 people might not fully be invested. Then
Yeah,
you're always going to have 1 or 2 maybe that are having some academic issues that are figuring things out at a later pace.
yeah,
Now you're down already to 25.
yeah.
Mid-season that number changes drastically. So I think like 30 is a good number, but I also think like more than that is a management nightmare. But less than that, sometimes you run into that injury plateau.
Yeah, yeah. I always said that a roster of 30, 10 of those 30, especially in the college season, I'm not talking professionally or but in the college season where you're playing such a condensed schedule in such a short period of time, 10 of those kids at any given point, you're dealing with things.
Yeah.
And for whatever, and they might either physically or mentally, they just can't commit what you need on the field, and it becomes noticeable. And so yeah, you're dealing with 20 kids, and your roster gets really small really quick.
Yep.
I don't think a lot of people. I don't think that gets recognized enough during a regular season how limited you can be.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so te- all right, so this is 4. So this will be your second season or third season in
Technically a third. When I was
third.
got hired
Okay.
the first year, I went and rolled right into the first
Yeah,
season.
yeah,
So technically my third, yeah.
yeah. How do you think you're progressing? Positional play, all those things that you talked about. I always say making the program yours, right? Because I think it takes time before you start to say, not that you never continue to tweak it, but you're like, yeah, it's the way I want it, and now it's just a matter of improving it. How far along are you from that perspective?
Yeah, I think realistically, if I was to break it into like 3 phases, I think we just finished phase 1. Um, I think a lot of it was just getting, everybody always speaks about culture and
Mm-hmm.
creating culture. I think before you even can get the culture, I think you have to have an identity. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we had to start was what is our identity? Is it different than it was before? How do we want to be perceived? So I think that was a big first step was let's get the right people on the bus and the right people off the bus
Mm-hmm.
for the long-term vision. So I think the first thing was just getting the people that we need in terms of numbers. I mean, the last 2 years, we haven't been able to train 11 aside in a practice. So literally for 2 years, we went into our first two games and we only trained seven aside against each other. Now, in saying that, it really put our training and positional play to the test to say,
Mm-hmm.
if we do this well and if this works, we're going to see it because we shouldn't have to get to that 11 aside point. I've been absolutely impressed with the retention from the player standpoint and really just the ability of what we're doing from implementing positional play. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think from a recruiting standpoint, if I was to put a year on it, I think 2025 should be our big spike again. The year we came in, there wasn't a lot of recruiting done. It
Yeah.
was survive in advance, let's get through. You graduate a big class and you have to do it again. So I think
Yeah.
this class coming in, I can truly feel confident saying this is I guess technically my first real recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think they all played great parts. And in 2025, I think that's when we should hopefully be seeing the fruit of some of the work we've been putting in.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your perspectives on the Mac Freedom. You are, quite frankly, second. You're the second coach I've spoken to about that plays in the Mac. So I'm just curious, what is your thinking? Misericordia is a beast. Like I do
Sure.
know that. So yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah. Go
You
ahead.
have tough teams on both sides, I think. It's funny because I had a unique situation when I was working at the last school I was at, and even at Misericordia. We were on the freedom side because the conference is so big, they broke into two sides
Yeah.
from travel distance. You got freedom and Commonwealth. So when I switched to LVC, Lebanon Valley played on the opposite side, and the Commonwealth side. So I had a season to see all those teams that I never really saw before, which I liked because I never really played them. After 5 seasons at Misericordia and 12 at Kings, it was the same
Mm-hmm.
people. So I wanted to
Yeah.
see somebody new. And then we did a realignment with the conference because some
Mm-hmm.
teams left, some new ones came
Yeah.
in, and LVC got put onto the freedom side. So now I'm back seeing those same people again. I think it's one of the strongest Division III conferences in the nation. It's not the strongest, but I think it's
Mm-hmm.
in the top five.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have powerhouses on the freedom side. You have Misericordia as a top five team.
Yeah.
Stevens is always tough and has gone to a
Yeah.
national tournament, and Arcadia is always very tough.
Mm-hmm.
The other side, I think you have Messiah is tough. They're always in a
Okay.
Sweet 16, Elite Eight, so on. So I think you're hitting tough teams on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no easy route, in my opinion.
No. No, you're definitely not right. Like, yeah, you're picking your poison. If you're in the Mac, you're picking your poison, right? Like, who do you want to go up against? Do you have a preference? Yeah. Um. What? uh, So year this last season, how do you think it went? What was your perspective? I mean, what do you take away from it in your, I'll just say, in your startup mode?
Yeah, I think from a recruiting standpoint, we knew we were going to take the hit this past season. Like we just knew that coming in. It was a matter of getting the numbers back to where we needed to be and getting the ability to where we needed to be. So, kind of what we thought was going to play out this past year is how it played out. Now, in saying that, I thought we played very, very good soccer. They played to how we trained. We did some very good stuff. I think we dropped about 5 games by 1 point, so
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like we were getting blown out. I thought we did good stuff. I think where we had our issues was when we rolled into our second half, we were maybe about 20, 22 deep.
Mm-hmm.
And other teams are a little bit deeper than that. So we start to just run out of steam when other people are subbing in their quality.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're looking to improve and move on a little bit. So I'm excited about where we're at going forward. But yeah, we kind of knew what we were in store for last year. We just went to war with it, said, hey, do the best you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah. We put a lot of
So
premium on the leadership stuff. That
yeah.
was the biggest thing. I think trying to create the environment and culture we want going forward without losing the understanding of we're still here right now
Yeah.
fighting.
Yeah. 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 You had one. What was it? One, two, three, four, five. have 5 games that are 1 goals, ties, or 1 goal losses. I always look at those as the first one. Like if you're looking, that's the jump to me, right? Like,
Yep.
hey, and if everything stays the same, what are the games that you think you can grab to? If you were, losing every game 5-0, then that's a different story, right? You got to figure different things out. But when you have 5 games that are either ties or 1 goal losses, those are the ones to flip. You do
Yep.
that, and you're in a very different place, right? Like
Yeah.
just maybe
Yeah.
even psychologically for you guys, like, oh my gosh, we're now 10-3 and right, ten
Yeah.
three or whatever the number is, and
I
right,
think strength of schedule is huge. I think
yeah, yeah,
adjusting that with where you're at as a program and team is massive. I think the first year, the schedule might have been a bit tougher than it should have been for what we
mm-hmm,
had in terms of numbers of players. The second year, I had to dial it back a little bit because that was the year I knew we had to make some changes and we had
right,
numbers lower. So I think, yeah, as you adjust it, you need some teams you can beat on, some teams that beat on you, and then you need those teams in between where it's a really fair fight.
fight, yeah,
So I think finding that gauge and moving that
yeah.
scale is important.
Do you think that you open the can of worms? That's not my fault. Do you think the whole notion of strength of schedule goes out the door now with the pairwise rankings? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean,
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm curious
I
about
think
it.
as coaches, we just view it very differently. Like
Yeah.
whether my take is right and wrong, I don't know. But the way I view it is, I base it off of the quality and the strength of my team. Like I feel
Yeah.
like if I match opponents with ability and quality of program,
Yeah.
I kind of want to have those three mixes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's hard because, yeah, you're right. There are teams out there that you can play the number one team or number two team in all of these so-called weaker conferences than
Yeah.
your conference and still have a really strong strength of schedule and try
Yeah.
to get that at large bid.
Yeah.
But are you preparing your
No.
team
Yeah.
for the other games? Like that's where I struggle with that.
I, I'm with you there. I that's the part where I think most coaches know there's you can game to get into the tournament, and then you could play like you want to win the tournament, right?
Yep.
Like those are two different. Like if you want a game just to get in, man, have at it, play, do it so that you get selected. Good on you. Um, but if you want to do something, then you got. I hate to say it, like iron sharpens iron.
Yep.
You're not going to get anywhere, even in conference. I would argue if all you're doing is you're playing these teams that you can thump on, right? Like I don't. Maybe it's just me, old
No,
school,
I
right?
agree.
Like yeah.
I agree.
Um. All right. So when do you start? When do you start in
August
this
16th,
August
everybody comes
16th?
back. August 17th, we start training. Yeah, so
Yeah.
soon.
I mean, I'll be there. I'll be reporting, so don't worry about that. What do you? I mean, do you have anything that you want to accomplish just from the soccer side? Not so much the wins and all that kind of stuff, but it, as you're continuing to evolve, like what is sort of your objectives for this fall?
Yeah. I think as a coach, and it's changed in terms of what I want to accomplish. Like, obviously, I want the team to do well. I
Hmm.
want us to win, make playoffs, and so on. I think that's kind of a given for everybody all the time. But I think the things that are, I I don't even know if it's wrong saying more important to me is creating a team environment where we're holding each other accountable, but also putting in the time, but having enjoyment while doing it. I think it takes a lot to build a program like that. I think, you can recruit talent, but to get talent on the same page as your vision and then also keep it consistent and having it accountable throughout. I think it's a lot of moving pieces. So
Hmm.
we put a premium on trying to develop a leadership program and teach the team like what we're trying to do is just have everybody accountable. Put in the time when coaches aren't looking, when we're not giving you packets, when we're not asking you. Like I want them to
Yeah.
do that on their own, and I
Yeah.
think that takes time to create.
Yeah.
On a second side piece that I really enjoy is I'm trying to mentor and develop my assistant coach who she got done playing at Division II level. We had a chance to work together at Kings, and then when I moved, we kind of broke up a little bit. So I had a chance to get her back with me at LVC, and I'm taking pride in trying to, what I feel is, develop her the right way so that she can move on and we can have another quality female coach out there. Because right now we're losing a lot of female coaches. And a thing that I kind of made as a personal mission is
Yeah.
I would love to continue to develop my players and my assistants to continue to stay in the game and coach. That's just something special to me. So that's a special project that I have for myself.
All right, I'm just going to ask you the tough question then. I'm sorry. You did it. I'm looking at um your assistant's bio. She graduated magna cum laude from
Yeah,
Kutztown. Who's smarter?
I'm gonna have to say, if it's gonna be anything social media or anything in the current trends, I'm pointing
Uh-huh.
to her because I do
Yeah, you're like
do any of that. I can tell her, I come up with the idea. I need you to make it come to life.
yeah. Let her deal with that. She knows the details. That's funny. That's
She
funny.
keeps me in line.
She, wow, she did the Tovo positional play too. That's interesting. Was that beforehand or is that? I mean, is that how committed you are? This is the weird. Is that how committed you are to the the whole positional play thing? Like you, I know
Yeah.
Tovo, and I'm very familiar
Yep.
with all of that. I'm a big fan, but like that's how committed you are to it. Like you,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we went all in. So
Mm-hmm,
twofold. One, I feel like humbly trying to say I'm that committed to trying to develop my assistant.
mm-hmm,
'Cause I just want them to continue to move on and keep the love and coaching.
mm-hmm.
The other part was, yeah, it was to get. I think it's first hard to find people that are willing to do 12 months of work for literally 1 month of pay, because that's the hardest part to do. But when you find that person, then somebody that really wants to do it as a living versus just get a free education and
Yeah,
masters. I feel like when you have that person, you hold on tight to them. So
yeah,
Courtney's that person. And I explained to her, I said, this is what we're trying to do. This is how I see the game. This is what I'd love to do with it. The thing that helps me with her is she's dual citizenship with England. Her dad's
oh
from
wow.
England and her
Oh,
mom is
nice.
from here. So
Yeah.
she has that influence because her dad played and, they have that QPR influence and
Oh,
everything going
nice.
on. So I was lucky with finding her.
Mhm.
Sent her to Spain. We did a lot of online stuff. So we've
Yeah.
invested a lot in coaching education. But yeah, we went all in on
Yeah.
the positional
That's
play. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well, I asked that because right, like you could talk about positional play, but it's not something that you could be like, "Hey, let's do a shooting drill."
right.
Like it's a word. It's not. It's not. That is not the case. It is a daily reinforcement and all that. So, um, tell me about your recruiting class. How the class coming in? Like, what type of players are you bringing in? Are you looking to fill? Like, are you looking for positions or okay? Now being positional, like if you're focusing on positional play, are you so concerned with where they play? Are you more concerned about how they play? Does that make sense?
It's changed so much, and it's funny
Yeah.
you say that because that's exactly it. I think once we started to try to implement and we did the research on positional play, your what your gauge or your radar is changed vastly. Now
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
more of, I don't care about the big, fast, strong kid. Like, sure, some of those characteristics do help in their play, but that's not the end all be all. So now it's, does the kid read off the ball well? Do they understand how to sit in between players?
Mm-hmm.
They're little things. Like, the thing I love about it the most is it's a collective way of playing. You're not relying on the so-called Messi's of the world,
Yeah.
or Ronaldo's, the one big player. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're collectively trying to make this happen. So I think that's a big piece. The teamwork of a player, the character of the player, and then the cognitive part is just
Yeah.
the big push to it. If you're willing to listen, learn, and try, I can teach that kid. But if you're a stud and you're like, I just don't like the way this looks, or I don't like rondos, I don't get them, it's hard to convince that
Yeah.
kid to want to buy in.
Yeah.
It's a different way of working.
But yeah, you got to get really comfortable with rondos and variations on the theme, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
I think that's the
And
reality.
just educating the player. I think
Yeah.
sometimes this way of playing is so different than what we've been used
Yeah.
to, is they don't understand, like, it works, buy in and try it. Whereas
Yeah.
sometimes people, like, you like what you like and what you're used to, and they want
Yeah.
to bail on it quick.
Well, I also think part of the problem, and that's not a problem, but it's just my observations on it, right? Like, sometimes it's easier to just sort of go the way we've been going, right? Like, which is, oh, you're the big, fast, strong, or whatever the case may be. you do this one thing really well, and I'm going to figure everything out to just let you do that one thing.
Yeah.
And I know on positional play, and like that's that that doesn't work anymore, right? Like you might be good at one thing, but I need you to be good at 10 things. I
Yep.
need you to be observant. I need you to all those different attributes that you want from a player that is very comfortable within a system, positionally. And I think that's what makes it great too, is you're plucking kids and you don't care. Well, you're a forward. No, well, I see you're outside mid. Like you're so much better there. Like you just, if
Yep.
cognitively they're able to, you can sort of just start moving kids around, and there's no impact to their play. Whereas I think the old way, I think that's a
Yeah.
problem. Taking a forward who's never played midfield or be a defender because you think it's just better for them. It's almost like you could see the smoke coming out of their head. Like I don't do that. I don't do
That's what I was
that.
trying to just explain to him, that like different teams have different needs. On
Yeah.
the last team you played on, they might
Yeah.
have needed a forward, and you were a great fit for the forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to what you asked before, is I think a lot of what we end up doing is because of that, we change a lot of people's position just based off the traits and the things
Yeah.
they do well.
Mhm.
We had one kid that she was a holding center mid. This was 2 seasons ago. She was one of our best 11, so I had to figure out how to get her on the field, but she wasn't a starting center mid. Ended up
Mhm.
making her a outside left back, and then when we would attack out of that positional play, she was that line of three, so she
Yeah,
was in the
yeah.
midfield anyway.
Yeah.
So it worked out, but finding things like that,
That
and
yeah.
but the kids have to be open to it. But finding like that, that's how we've been operating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it opens up your world a lot more. Like you said, your roster of 20, whatever the 20 functional players at any given point gives you a lot more flexibility than if
Yep.
you wed it. Like, oh, they can't play this position because that's not their position. Like, how many times have coaches done that or just been like, it's not going to work, or no, in head ahead of time, like this isn't going to really work out well. I just think it's anyhow. I can go down a rabbit's hole with that. I'm going to ask you this: you have a wonderful field, wonderful stadium. I was really impressed. I don't know what I was expecting when I visited. I did that Fields of Dreams, and you checked it. I don't know. For some reason, I thought you guys were something totally different than what you were. Honestly, to be totally honest, I was expecting I was going to another Penn State campus or a UPitt
Gotcha.
campus, right? I don't know why. I don't know why, but you have a beautiful, beautiful grass field. Tell me there's no change, no plans to change that.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we just got a new athletic director. Probably about 6 months ago. Really great guy. Has a very good understanding and vision of college athletics and footprints.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's actually something that's up in the air. We're doing an athletic expansion plan,
Mm-hmm.
and there's possibility of 2 turf fields coming in. And Charlie, our men's coach, and I had our hearts slowly start to break when we were hearing that. There's a lot of tradition and history at our place, and it was tough
Yeah.
because outside of the season, we take the goals off the field, the
Yeah.
signage, everything, so it literally looks like
It
just a
looks
square with
square
grass
feet.
in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But normally it's real decked out. So I mean, our program started from Christian Pulisic's dad, Mark,
Mm-hmm.
back in 1996. So we had
Mm-hmm.
that tradition plugged into the national team a
Yeah.
little bit. Then in 2000, we had, and again, because of his connection, it was the women's national team trained on that field
Oh
for the
wow.
Gold Cup.
Wow.
The U23 men's national team were training on that for a CONCACAF Olympic qualifier in that same year. And then in 2001, they actually got voted. It's called the STMA College Field of the Year. It's a facility award that I guess is the highest award for facilities for colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And they were offered that for that soccer field in 2001. So
Wow.
our facilities guys do awesome work with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just the soccer guys getting it set before I even got there, I think it created an awesome environment to make a quality soccer
Yeah.
program.
Yeah. I always envision like what it would be like on that. Like you have the stands, the right cut into the hill, and then the hill.
Yep.
Like that's got to be a pretty cool place for a big game and kids just hanging out. Like it's a fantastic little.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know it's back there. That was why I
Yep. The
talked to your
environment's awesome.
goalkeeper. I was like
Oh, God,
a
yeah.
new soccer field. Like, yeah, yeah.
Well, behind where you were, it was funny. If you went a little bit further past that game field, it opens up to 2 grass practice fields. We have our own for the women, and then the men have
Men,
their own.
yeah.
and all of our equipment and everything is back there.
Mhm.
And it's funny because some of the practice footage, practice fields look better than some game fields we've been
Mhm.
to. And it's just amazing. And it has nothing to do with us other than just staying off it when we're not using. But the facilities guys do such a great job
Yeah.
with it. It's one of the nicest grass fields I've ever been on
Yeah.
as a player or a coach.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was in the I'm totally geeking out. Like, when you go to a grass field that I don't want to say is not well kept, but is just a grass field, like
Yep.
you can look and I can be like, that's the one goal, that's the other goal, just because of it's cut out. It's basically
Yep.
trampled down by the goalkeeper and beat up. When I showed up and I knew the field because of the fence, right?
Yep.
Like that little, but I couldn't tell you directionally other than this is midfield because I'm assuming they line it up with the stands and your
Yeah.
in your benches. But outside of that, there was not an you couldn't even tell where the lines were, and I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's impressive to me.
They
I
do an
love it.
awesome job.
I'm big in noticing that now because I'd say everybody has turf, right? And at some
Yep.
point, like ah,
Well, us soccer
I'm
people
going
are
back to the '80s, baby. Mud bowls and
right.
steel cleats. Like I'm totally into that now.
And us soccer people love a good grass field. Like
Yeah,
it's just something about it where
yeah,
you don't have any other lines. You have
yeah,
just your lines. And like
yeah,
you said, like we have our facilities guys, they cut the grass field
ah,
the plays like this, and then as soon
yeah,
as you walk past the white line, it spikes to that. It's like
yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah,
cool feature. Like it's just they
It's
do a
so
good
cool,
job.
so cool, so cool. Anyhow, um, all right, Coach. So now, from the competitive standpoint, um, what what like if you could just what goals do you have from a competitive standpoint for 2024? Because then I'm going to hold it to you and I'm going to play it on repeat if you achieve or don't achieve it. So
I like it because that'll keep me accountable. Um, I think a realistic goal for us this year is we should be 500 or better with the overall record.
hmm
I would like to fight for the third and fourth spot within our conference for playoffs.
hmm
We're going to be very, very young. We're bringing in about 18 freshmen this year. So big class, and again, a lot of it was just because there wasn't a lot of recruiting in the past, so we had to get the numbers and the quality up just to compete. So
Yeah.
we'll be young, we'll make those dumb young mistakes, but I think we're going to be pretty athletic and talented. So
hmm
I'd like to think that's where we're going to end up, and that's what I'm shooting for to feel like we've made some good growth and development.
hmm All right. I just thought of some other things. I'm sorry. Can I? So when I was there, and you come over the bridge and it's like I just called it the athletic center, right, where you
Yeah.
have an amazing gym, right, and then you have that health center and the football stadium and the soccer fields and all that stuff. And you mentioned the new AD. I'm always curious about like what is Lebanon Valley's commitment to athletics? Is it something that they're now like we want to be? I'm not saying that the past was bad, but
Right.
like
Where do they want to go?
we want to, yeah. Where do we want to go? We want to elevate people's impression of our athletics programs in general and our facilities and all that stuff. Is that something that is happening, or is it just because you guys are doing the right things across your entire campus?
I think the school is one of the rare Division threes that understands the very beneficial partnership of athletics and academics. I
Mm-hmm.
think at a lot of schools you go to, and I can only speak from the Division three process because that's the majority of where I've been. But there sometimes seems to be a bit of a divide at some places you go to where not that the emphasis or focus shouldn't be on getting the degree, because obviously that's what you pay all the money for
Mm-hmm.
and what you're going there for. But I do think there is a very complementary component to sometimes many of those kids pick that place to go because they can continue to do their sport and continue their education of what they want to do. And I think Lebanon Valley has understood that. So
Mm,
they found a way where it's not a divide, it's not a constant fight, because I've been at places that's a fight. And to
mm,
get the resources you need as a coach and an athlete, there's just certain things you need to just be able to compete. I'm not even
yeah,
talking about get next level. I'm just saying just to compete with other
yeah,
schools. And you have to be lucky enough to be able to find a school that the administration understands that partnership. So I feel like they do that well at LVC. So they want to actually grow the school. From what I've heard through the pipeline is they would like to grow the enrollment each year with the idea of, and again, this was a while back, I heard it, but trying to get to like that 4,000 mark.
mm-hmm,
Most Division threes, with the exception of Jersey, because they're a different animal, most Division threes are about 3,000 students.
yeah,
Jersey, some of the state schools are Division three, so the numbers are a bit higher.
yeah,
But I think that's the ballpark, is between 3,000, 4,000 students is where everybody wants to kind of get to. So I love the fact they're trying to grow things, because when COVID came around, so many people panicked, and it was everything you could do to maintain, where
yeah,
schools like LVC wanted to grow. So it gave me a lot of promise and hope that if you're trying to grow during a very difficult time versus just get by, you're in a pretty good spot.
mm-hmm,
So latest things are new athletic expansion project that I'm excited about is possibly two new turf fields, moving baseball and softball so we could partner them closer together to make a better atmosphere. Um, Soccer field
where
work.
I'm sorry, where are the baseball, softball? The
So base
baseball, no,
That was right over
softball's,
by the soccer field.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
a replica of Camden Yard, which is very, very nice for baseball.
uh-huh.
Softball was on the other side by the sports complex. So that was
Ah,
to
okay,
the
yeah.
left of the sports center there.
Ah, okay, okay,
Yep.
yeah,
So
yeah,
putting them, and I think that's a big piece of it, is our
yeah,
new AD loves being able to put the footprint and put sports together to make that
mm,
environment, which I think is a great idea.
mm,
So the downside that we're worried about is soccer is on the other side of campus.
yeah,
We don't want to move to turf, even though 90% of our games are turf, but it's our field. It's got soccer history. We have the home field advantage when people come play us, since they're all used to turf. We want to put lights up. We want to put bigger shelters. So there's awesome environment there. So we don't want to move, but at the same point, I'd be lying to say I'm not excited about some of the new things they're also
yeah,
looking
yeah,
to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
So
Well, I'm gonna reach out to your AD, and I will offer to interview him if he stays, if you guys stay on grass, because you're
awesome.
right. It is a cool place. It's just a really cool place, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I know I've sort of gone on a little
Appreciate
bit.
it.
So, all right, Coach. Any parting? Oh, this is my other one, my other favorite. So I'm in high demand. I'm as a player. A lot of schools want to recruit me. I'm that good. What's your best LVC sales pitch to me as a prospective player?
If you want something different, and if you want to be challenged not only on the playing side, if you want expanded cognition, character, and competence, we're the place for you. As we try to do the holistic thing. I'm not just going to work on you as a technical player. I feel like the environment, what we're going to give you, is good people, a sarcastic sense of humor, and we love our food. Those three things, guys.
You got me on the humor and the food. I am all in. I'm all in. All right, Coach. Really do appreciate us finally connecting. It was great talking to you. I will definitely try to make it up your way again, and would love to catch a game at some point.
That'd be awesome.
It would be great. But wish you and your team, the ladies, the program, all the best. I'll be watching as I always do, and yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Love your work. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.